Well, it's day 184 of the strike action by Academic Staff Union of Universities, the umbrella body for university lecturers in Nigeria. The body's leadership met the NIMI Breaks Renegotiation Committee on Tuesday to channel a way out of the current impasse between ASUU and the Nigerian government. But that meeting produced no desired result. While ASUU members and students of universities across the country had appeared upbeat about the chances of the strike ending on Tuesday, the committee, according to the lecturers, failed to present any workable plan. The committee has appealed to the striking ASUU members to end the strike, while the government charts a favorable course for both parties, a proposal ASUU has rejected. Welcome to VSA, I'm Sulaiman. Well, since 14th of February, university lecturers have been on an industrial action to protest their payment plan and over the refusal of the Nigerian government to follow through on the 2009 agreement. Now, the failure of the Nigerian government to fulfill this agreement has led to many strike actions by the University Teachers Union, but this year's has been one of the longest. One of the arguments of ASUU is the federal government's insistence on the Integrated Payroll and Personnel Information System, otherwise known as IPPIS, which is used to pay federal workers. ASUU, on its hand, said it wants University Transparency Accountability Solution, called UTAS, as the payment platform for lecturers. National President of the union, Professor Emmanuel Osodeke, however, revealed on Monday that the Nigerian government has accepted ASUU's UTAS proposal for payment, which is a sign of progress. The rest of the negotiation, however, remains unclear, unsolved, stalled as students continue to battle frustration at home. But joining me now to unpack this is Dr. Dele Ashiru, who is ASUU chairman at the University of Lagos, and of course, Adetunji Ogunyemi, who is an associate professor of economic history at Obafemi Awolowo University in Ile-Ife in southwest of Nigeria. Gentlemen, thanks for your time, but for now, let's go with you, Dr. Ashiru. You've been on the show with me a couple of times to talk about this. It's amazing that this has lingered. What's the current situation of things with the Nigerian government?
Well, thank you very much. It's so sad to say that nothing has changed. The situation has remained the same. The last meeting, we are told government came with a proposal that is far below what the level of discussion had reached. So as we speak, there's really nothing, from the part of government to demonstrate enough seriousness in terms of a desire to bring this strike to an end. So as I speak with you, the issues have remained the same: renegotiation of the 2009 ASUU-FGN agreement, abrogation of the now very corrupt, discredited IPPIS scheme. The Accountant General, who told us that there was no alternative to IPs, is today languishing in jail on account of helping himself to over 170 billion of the people's money. That in itself should put a closure to the issue of IPPIS. Not only that, the Minister of Communication and Digital Economy only recently told Nigerians that there are humongous flaws in the deployment of IPPIS. So we are a union of intellectuals. We are glad that our union is today being vindicated on an issue we raised many years back. So I can tell you that government has not shown enough seriousness to end this strike action.
Well, it's amazing and surprising because when news broke this week, many had thought that this Tuesday's meeting was just going to be the end. But again, if the government has agreed to allow lecturers to be paid using what some of your colleagues have fixed, talking about UTAS, can we say that hope is in sight about the strike getting called off?
Well, the president of our union was quoted to have said that government had agreed to use UTAS. I think that he was not quoted within context. The point he tried to make was and is still that the chief of staff, who was mandated to bring this strike to a closure, told the world that UTAS, U3P, GS, and IPPIS will be tested. And whichever one is the best will be adopted by government. The three had been tested between the technical committee of our union and the technical committee of NITSA. UTAS was rated the best. But as I speak with you, there has not been any official communication to our union that UTAS accepted as a payment platform in Nigerian universities. Until that is done, all the talk about UTAS. So what I can, that the test of all the payment platforms that were made, UTAS came first, came top, and all the unions in UTAS, contrary to the antics of some divisive tendencies in government, we are therefore hoping that an official communication will come from government, as had been accepted.
Well, apologies to our viewers. We're having some, intermittent glitches in the connection, the virtual connection to Dr. Ashiru. Dr. Ashiru, thanks again for your time. And we understand that your union is about now still in a meeting, and that is why some of them are not being able to be on this show. But help for the benefit, especially of non-Nigerians, Africans watching across the continent. What are ASUU's demands, if we can go through that again?
Well, ASUU's demands have remained the same. The first is the renegotiation of the 2009 ASUU federal government agreement. In that agreement, there are three principal pillars. The first is what we call conditions of service, which meant that the conditions of service of those who work in Nigerian universities have remained the same in the last 30 years. As we currently speak, the highest paid professor in Nigerian university earns less than $500 in a month. For the avoidance of doubt, the net pay of a professor at bar in most Nigerian universities is from 16,000 naira, which is less than 5 of the current exchange rate. The second is funding for revitalization. You will realize that going by the needs assessment of Nigerian universities in 2013, Nigeria realized that if we are to arrest the decay in Nigerian universities, government must be prepared to inject the sum of 1.3 trillion over a period of 5 years, because in 2013, it was the Goodluck Jonathan administration that injected the highest fund, which is 200 billion. The Buhari administration, in about 7 years, have only been able to release 70 billion naira. We found out that in most universities in Nigeria, they lack basic, laboratory reagents. There are no books in the libraries. Those are there, are dated. Students live, in discrepant conditions in their respective campuses, and there are no modern teaching facilities to make Nigerian universities globally competitive. We are therefore insisting that the pledge that government made in 2013, be met. Also, there's the question of university autonomy and academic freedom, which IPPIs are totally eroded. Our government promised to pay our members and academic allowances, up to today, government is still in default of 2 tranches of end academic allowances. There is the unbridled proliferation of universities in Nigeria, such that universities have become constituency projects. As we are currently on strike, there's a bill, before the National Assembly to license another 60 universities. If you have universities that are not properly funded, what is the logic in proliferating, in increasing the number? So we also have questions about, the governance issues in state universities. A state governor can wake up and take any decision as he chooses in state universities. Our union is saying that the governance structure in state universities should be such that conforms with the dictates of the university system all over the world. Lastly, we're also talking about, the reposition of the National Universities Commission to be able to minister to the regulatory aspects of university operation. And finally, we went on strike to get government to set up visitation panels to universities to check corruption and governance issues in government universities. Those committees have submitted their reports more than 2 years ago. Up till now, we are still awaiting the issuance of government's white paper on those reports. So these are all of the demands that our union is placing before the federal government. They talk about no money, but some of these demands don't really require money. They only
it's been a long journey so far, 6 months down the line. In all of these demands you've reeled out, has the Nigerian government met up with any of those you just told us?
Not anyone. Not one. They are even refusing to talk about them. Rather than talk about them, they are busy proliferating universities. And that's why our union has come to the conclusion that this government seems not to be serious about opening the universities. Not only one.
There's the part about emotion from students and parents. Dr. Ashiru, do you think the Nigerian government has triggered a sort of distrust in the ASUU leadership?
Well, if you reach an agreement with a union and you refuse to implement, you make promises which you have no intention of honoring. Certainly, there are avenues for mistrust. As we speak, government is still in default of, critical promises made to our union and the agreements that have been reached with our union. So how do you trust a people who enters into an agreement and will refuse to honor the terms of the agreement?
And the latest position on the strike, because just before you came on live, we also understand that some of your members are still meeting, following yesterday's meeting Tuesday. There are reports of universities next meeting to decide. What should we expect after today's meeting?
Well, I can't really tell you what to expect. It is true that as we speak, the leadership of our union are meeting. But as a democratic organization, decisions are not taken at the level of the leadership. Whatever is discussed would be communicated to respective congresses in various branches. Those decisions will be thoroughly debated at those levels, and then we will meet again at the level of the National Executive Council to review, submission from congresses. It is only that body that can make a pronouncement, on the next line of action and what expectations Nigerians should have from our union.
Dr. Ashiru, quickly here, does it also worry you? It looks as if ASUU hasn't also been able to speak to the Nigerian people, especially parents, because some parents in Nigeria still think that ASUU is a troublemaking union. They don't see reasons why ASUU should be on strike for this long. What's the conversation between your union and the Nigerian public, specifically parents of students?
Well, thank you very much for this very laudable question. Nigerians believe only what they choose to believe. You will agree with me that in terms of communicating with students and Nigerians, our union have done, more than enough. But let me paint a scenario that parents must understand, and indeed our students. You see, all of the concessions that we have gotten in the Nigerian universities, in the Nigerian university system so far, are consequent upon the struggles and especially the strike action of our union. As you can see, government is unwilling, is not committed to the education of its citizens, especially at the tertiary level. Having said that, what parents need to understand is that we need to continue to hold government accountable. We need to continue to insist that it is the responsibility of government to educate its citizens. Should we allow government to do what it wants to do in Nigerian universities, 80% of those students will not be able to come back to the university. And 80% of the parents of our students will not be able to afford the humongous fees that will be slammed on them. When private universities were to be established, we were told that in no distant future, private universities will take over from public universities. More than several years after the establishment of private universities, owned by, politicians and their cronies, they discovered that funding universities is not a tea party. What they are trying to do now is to successfully discredit public universities so that their own universities will have patronage. And that is what our union is against. The Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria stipulates that it shall be the responsibility of government to educate its citizens. What ASUU is simply doing is holding government true to that provisions of the Constitution. So we plead with our students to see their temporary stay at home as sacrifices that they have to make for the survival of the Nigerian university system. For us to stop doing what we are doing is to take university education out of a vast reach of our students, and their parents will certainly not be able to pay the amount that will be slammed on them should public universities be concession. I ask the question, where are public primary schools today? Where are public secondary schools today? Government wants to turn public universities to what they have turned primary and secondary schools to. And our union, as a union of intellectuals who side, with the masses of the people and the downtrodden of Nigerians, will not allow government, to destroy the last vestiges of the public university system that we have in Nigeria.
Well, now you just spoke about the people and the masses. Dr. Ashiru, this is almost a personal, question to you. We've seen what you've been doing over the years, your contribution to civil society, and now you are the chairman of the University of Lagos ASUU branch. Quickly here, one would have thought that this would have been over, knowing full well that some of these people that your your union has been having meetings with people, notable people who were once upon a time in the civil society. You have the Minister of Labor for State. You have a few people who should understand what ASUU is fighting for. So, what's the reading when your union comes back with a negative feedback? How do you feel personally?
Well, one feels so sad that people who pretend, because now it's very obvious that they pretend to be on the side of the people, once they become assimilated in government, they abandon the very ideals which they once stood for. And one very clear example is the Minister of State for Labor, who used to be with us in the trenches, but today, having been accommodated and assimilated in government, he's now jettisoning those values and ideals he once stood for. It is, worrisome that once Nigerians are appointed to government offices, they seem to forget the entire values which they once stood for. But we cannot be daunted. We shall continue, to hold government accountable to their constitutional responsibilities and to the good of the citizens of the country. One cardinal principle of responsibility of government is to minister to the welfare of the people. And in this instance, one of the ways to do that is by ensuring that the citizens of Nigeria get educated. As a union and a union of intellectuals, we will not shy away from our insistence that those who get our mandate to be in government must live up to constitutional dictates and guarantee the welfare and the well-being of Nigerians.
It's a recurrent theme, what people are going through now. On the show, I spoke to someone who is also a lecturer at your university, and he said that I was a student for many years, and I went through this, and now I'm a lecturer, and I'm going through this. So there must be some form of lasting solutions to these problems, Dr. Ashiru.
Well, you see, when you have a political system that throws up a ruling elite and not minister to the welfare of the people, you cannot but find, this kind of situation. Look, I was student union president here at this university and protested severally with my teachers as ASUU, to put education in a situation, tertiary education, in a situation that will be globally competitive. More than 20 years today, as a university teacher, a lecturer, I am still struggling to attain those goals I struggled for as a student. That tells you that there's something wrong with the Nigerian system. And that's why our union believes that individuals cannot change system. What we require for the development of Nigeria and the education of its citizens is a system change. And that is why all Nigerians, artisans, market women, elites, journalists, lawyers, doctors, all of us as workers in the Nigerian political system must come together to demand a system change in such a way that the commanding heights of the Nigerian society and economy will be in the hands of the people, who will then use them, in the interest of the people, not, in the interest of the ruling elite.
Let me jump in here, Dr. Ashiru. I get a point. Dr. Ashiru, apologies for butting in. I get a point. Let me jump in here. Let's look at representative democracy for a bit. Nigeria is in a democracy. And has ASUU tried, sponsoring a bill and also lobbying some representatives to push? Because I am listening to you now talking about, look, it's everybody's problem. We all must fix it. It's not a problem of an individual or political party. Is there a bill, that ASUU, because as a union, you can push a bill. Is ASUU sponsoring a bill, speaking to any of these representatives in Nigeria's National Assembly to see that these things are enshrined in the statutes?
Yeah, bear in mind that ASUU is a trade union and is limited by a number of laws. But in terms of lobbying, we have been lobbying. In terms of sponsoring bills, you will remember a member of the National Assembly sponsored a bill that, seeks to prohibit public officers from sending their children abroad to go to school. What happened to the bill? You will recall that the Speaker of the House of Representatives, last year insisted that he was not going to pass the education budget until, provisions were made for ASUU's demand in the education budget. We have also interfaced with the President of the Senate, and all of them have intervened at one point or the other. But implementation of even legislative bills rests with the executive arm of government. And that's where we seem to have the greatest challenge, because you have people there who are not only patriotic, but don't have the interest of Nigerians at heart. I mean, look at the Minister of Labor, for example, or even, the Minister of Education, who are saddled with the responsibility of bringing this strike action to a closure, and their lackluster and lackadaistic attitude towards the strike action. So in terms of lobbying, we do lobby. In terms of sponsoring bills, we have sponsored bills, and you know that as a trade union, we can pass the bill. So once the bills are rejected, there's nothing we can do. All that I think we should do is for Nigerians to become political and ensure that only those who will minister to their welfare get into government offices.
Well, and it's also important that relationships are better. And what about those who are not a part of this conversation? Talking about some other appointees of government, some other politicians in the National Assembly. Is there anyone reaching out to saying that they put pressure? Because it's very important that there's some form of pressure in ensuring that this is sorted out once and for all.
You know the kind of political system that we run. One of the reasons why it is so difficult for them to accede to our demands is because they don't want to compromise, the amount of money that will go into their own pocket. So politicians, are there not to, cater for the needs of the people, but for their own selfish personal interest and aggrandizement. And that is why it is the responsibility of Nigerians, students, their parents, workers, artisans, all of us coming together, to take our destinies in our hands and mount pressure on relevant government agencies responsible for this situation to get, put a closure to the strike action.
Well, let's take a moment, Dr. Ashiru. When we come back, we'll talk more about some of the key things that should be done to ensuring that this is actually sorted out once and for all, because we understand that students have been at home for more than 6 months, while many of the lecturers have also taken to new jobs and businesses just to sustain themselves. So that's when we return. Stay with us. Well, it's a home stretch here on VSA, on News Center Television. Of course, we're looking at the situation between the Nigerian government and university teachers. Now, the students in Nigeria have been at home for more than 6 months, while many of their lecturers have taken to new jobs and businesses just to eke a living. Now, the striking lecturers have said the industrial action will continue until the federal government meets their demand. Still with me is Dele, Ashiru, and pretty much later we'll be going to Banjul, the Gambia, to join Associate Professor Adetunji Ogunyemi. Dr. Ashiru, thanks for your time again. And, have there been interactions with student bodies? You're not new to that. You were once a student union leader. Any interaction to know their state of mind and, of course, explain the situation to them? Perhaps they may also be able to speak in their own language to parents and relatives.
Yeah, we interface with representatives of students, National Association of University Students, and the National Association of Nigerian Students. And in our interaction, it was clear that they understood the reasons why Nigerians and our students and their parents must see what is going on as a sacrifice, for the survival of the Nigerian university system. Take, for example, if you teach about 1,000 students today in Nigerian universities, how many can you find, 5% of those students who are willing to come back to the universities as university teachers? The reason why this is so is because when they look at the treatment that is meted out to lecturers in Nigerian universities and how their teachers are currently being treated and the remuneration you get if you come into the teaching profession, is nothing to write home about, and it's nothing that can attract best praise into the system. That in itself is a tragedy for the future of university education in Nigeria. Those of us who are teaching today in Nigerian universities will not be here forever. So if it does become so difficult to reproduce, teachers in the system, then you know that it's a time bomb waiting to explode. So there are conversations with our students. They understand the reasons why we're on strike. They understand the reasons why we are doing what we are doing. And they also understand that it's a temporary sacrifice,
Okay, let's quickly go to Banjul, Gambia, where Adetunji Ogunyemi, an associate professor of economic history, will join us. Dr. Ogunyemi, thanks for your time, and I'm happy that we're able to connect with you over the phone. There seemed to be a glitch with the video output. The strike is still on. You've had conversations with us here on VSA, yourself and Professor Osodeke, on this matter. 6 months down the line, what can you tell us about the strike so far?
The issue concerning the strike today is a matter of whether the government is serious or not serious. It's as simple as that. Then it is also a matter of priority. And it is also, finally, a matter of whether we consider education to be key to national interest or not. And since the government has not found any of these issues, 3 issues relevant to education in Nigeria, of course, there won't be any serious negotiation. So 184 days of strike in the university system, I think it's a shame. It's a shame on the handlers of the system.
And Dr. Ogunyemi, if we talk of sustenance, I've been speaking with Dr. Ashiru. Quite frankly, he's on the same page with you. But is it realistic to expect the government to truly fund universities?
The issue of funding universities in Nigeria cannot be separated from the issues that have to do with the priorities of government. So, and what should be the priorities of government? The Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in 1999, as altered, is clear on the directive principles and objectives of state policy. In that Constitution, which is the ground norm of the Nigerian state, the issues that have to do with education is clearly stipulated in section number 18 of that law. Section 18 of sections 1, 2, and 3, paragraph 8 to C, is clear that the provision of education in Nigeria is the responsibility of them. That's our law. That's what our law says. In fact, it says education shall be provided on equal, adequate, and effective basis. From the primary school level to the university level. That's what because any Nigerian can read this. Section 18, subsections 1, 2, 3. It's as simple as that. That's our law. But people assume that, assuming but not considering, that the government does not have enough money. What ASUU and other academic universities in Nigeria are saying is, what is the proportion of your expenditure that you commit to education? And in answer to that, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, has advised all sovereign states, and I suspect that Nigeria is a sovereign state, should commit not less than 26%, that's about 1/4, of their total yearly expenditure to education. The best that the Nigerian federal government has ever done since 1999 has been 6.5%. That is the best that the government has ever done. Committing only 6.5% of its expenditure to budget. This year, the proportion of education spending in the budget is just a 45.7%. And what are we saying? If the Nigerian budget is 16 trillion this year, this is just 4 trillion committed to education. 50% of it university education. That will be 2 trillion. And 2 trillion to primary and secondary education. That's all. So you begin to gauge the seriousness of the government from its budgetary direction and orientation. So if the government will say only about 6% of its total income, at best 7%, can ever go to educating the next generation of human beings, then you begin to know that that government is not serious. It's as simple as that.
And Dr. Ogunyemi, quickly here, we're looking at the payment, the review of payments for lecturers. And a while ago, Dr. Ashiru, call it a spat, but he alluded to the fact that if the Accountant General, who's supposed to be the chief custodian of Nigeria's, finances, can be enmeshed in some, corruption, how watertight is the IPPIS?
The issue of the Independent Personnel Payroll and Information System, IPPIS, is an issue that has to do with the soul of the Nigerian public service. Don't forget, are you there? Don't forget, the World Bank and the IMF had, through a committee they instructed the Nigerian government to set up in the year 2000. That committee was headed by Dr. and Professor Dr. Phillips on budget review and reform system. They submitted the report in December of 2000. So they said that there should be an integration of all the payment systems in Nigeria with respect to public and civil servants. That was their recommendation. Unfortunately, that committee refused, neglected, and failed to factor into its calculus the fact that there are two diametrically opposed compensatory systems in Nigeria. A compensatory system that is supervised by the National Income, Salaries and Wages Commission, and another compensatory system, which is the one that is very sumptuous for politicians and political office holders, supervised by the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission, via Section 162 of the Constitution of the Republic. So you have two sets of Nigerians that are being paid from the federal purse, but they are being paid so unequally to the extent that to recommend one single dose, a therapeutic dose, to solving the problem of leakages in the system, in that compensatory system, it is self-discount. That's exactly what IPPIS represents. It is it intends to work together and to centralize in the office of the Accountant General of the Federation a compensatory system for all public and civil servants. It will not work. Reason? The peculiarities of the university system is such that our compensation with the university system does not carry exactly as the civil service system. It can never be, because our mode of service is different from theirs. For example, we retire at 70. In the public service, they retire at 60 or maybe 65. So after about 60 or 65, the IPPIS will terminate us from the system. That's just one example. The second is the issue that has to do with sabbatical leave. If a lecturer works for 6 years, the 7th year, he will go and be a visiting scholar in another university to understudy that system, work in that system, and be compensated by that system. And then after the 7th year, bring the experience back to his mother or primary university for distribution and for instruction. The IPPIS refused, as neglected, and failed to recognize that. So, and there are other 7 other compensatory systems. So the problem with our system of our country is a system in which some very senior bureaucrats sit down in one place with a laptop and begin to recommend medicine for different diseases, but using the same therapeutic system. That is exactly the problem we have in Nigeria.
Well, I think listening to you is so crystal clear, but again, one wonders because those are genuine fears, known full well, especially looking at, lumping everything together with the retirement age of every other federal civil servant, which ultimately differs from what we see with the retirement age of a university lecturer in Nigeria. Before we let you go, so that we can bring in Dele Ashiru quickly here, before we leave you, Dr. Ogunyemi, quickly, what is ASUU's plan, or are there plans you think that ASUU can implement on a return of students? How can they make the most of the situation?
The ball is in the federal government court. The ball is in the court of the minister in charge of labor and the minister responsible for education. They are to up the ante in their negotiations, and if you like, in reconciliation with ASUU with respect to the demand. 3 key demands. Number 1, that ASUU's UTAS be used for the university system. That's all. A system that ASUU has developed ex gratis without collecting money from anybody, and is given to the federal government free of charge to use for the Nigerian university system. And there are 49 federal universities and more than 60 state universities. 2, the issue that has to do with our compensation, our remuneration. I mean, is it not a shame that after about 24 years in the university system, my salary is only 240,000 naira, and I'm an associate professor? What do you say to that? So, and then the third issue that has to do with what is the proportion of budget that should go to education use. Maybe government can begin, ASUU can stop there a little in that and say, well, can we please start with something like about 15%, and then gradually across the board rise to about 25-26%. That is the most reasonable thing. Rather than begin to blackmail ASUU on the issue that has to do with 1.2 trillion. And what is 1.2 trillion naira? Anyway, that's what we are asking. That is still less than 10% of Nigeria's total budget of 16 trillion. In a system where we expect not less than 4 trillion will go into education. That's just about 10%. So that's it. Otherwise, if these 3 bills are not cleared, it is self-deceit to expect that ASUU will return to work. ASUU will not. That's the truth.
Well, I'd like to thank you for your time as always, and we'd like to let you off now. There's Associate Professor of Economic History, Dr. Adetunji Ogunyemi, live from the Gambia. And thanks again. Let's quickly close up this with Dr. Dele Ashiru, who's been with us from the very beginning. Thanks for your patience. And I I caught you for a bit listening with rapt attention, and I can see pain also written all over you. This is one moment that in the life of a lecturer you never wanted to witness, to see you out of classrooms, to see your students be disconnected from what you're building and working on. Are you thinking of how to actually bridge this gap if and when you return to school?
Yeah, certainly we have always done that. We do that because once we go back to school, we are going to bear the brunt, of a gap foisted on us by the almighty Nigerian government. Normally, an academic session should be about 32 weeks, 16 weeks at par. Usually when we resume like this, our colleagues are denied their, annual leave periods. They are denied their research and their publication leave in order to make up for all of these lost processes within the system. It is so sad that you bear the brunt of a situation forced on you by the irresponsibility of those who are supposed to take action and prevent, situations like this. But we will remain undaunted because we understand that unless we continue to do what we are doing, the ruling elites are only prepared to discredit and destroy public universities so that they can concession it to themselves.
One final one, again, I was just jumping in, one final one, because Kenya has just had its election, and News Central Television covered that election live, and we saw it was issues-based campaign all through, irrespective of what Kenyans are going through. How can Nigerians, get these issues, on the front burner as it moves towards the 2023 election, specifically looking at education?
One way to respond to that is Nigerians don't hate their dictators. They only wish to be like them. I mean, as we are currently on strike, look at what is going on in the political landscape. None of them is making the strike and the question of education a major issue in the campaign. And Nigerians are busy eulogizing indolence and, unpatriotic campaigns from all of the gladiators. So it is so sad that we have a society that has not learned from the mistakes of the past. But as a social scientist, we cannot despair. We will continue to educate Nigerians to hold politicians and public office holders accountable to their election promises and, to issues that are on the front burner in the polity. Unless we're able to do that, we will only continue to gravitate, within a circus, and there will be, motion without movement.
Well, it's a place for us to say many thanks for being such a nice company, Dr. Dele Ashiru, the chairman of ASUU, University of Lagos chapter, and of course, Dr. Adetunji Ogunyemi, associate professor of economic history, who joins us from the Gambia. Many thanks. And of course, to all our viewers from across the 54 African countries, thank you for watching. I'm Sulaiman. Bye-bye.